Rajan and Mithun had been friends since childhood, but they operated on entirely different logic. Rajan took the stairs. He studied, got a stable government job, and built a quiet, reliable life. Mithun spent his time staring out the window, obsessively looking for the elevator. He hated labor and believed the secret to life was simply finding the right loophole. He thought he found that ultimate loophole in a torn newspaper clipping passed around a local jail. It detailed an ancient occult practice called the Andhakup Siddhi, a ritual performed in a dried-up well that promised absolute financial freedom. The Andhakup Siddhi operates as a cold, transactional contract. Executing it in an abandoned space replaces the need for religious appeal with a hard exchange of materials for guaranteed results. Stepping into a high-stakes transaction without understanding the underlying mechanics is dangerous in standard business. In the occult, it is fatal. The signing room for this contract was a dead, claustrophobic stone well. Mithun lowered himself into the dirt, letting the darkness swallow him. For 5 nights, he methodically laid out the terms. He drove iron nails into the stone walls. He arranged lemons inside circles of burnt ash. And on the final night, he extinguished his torch entirely, sitting in total sensory deprivation to recite the activation sequence. The moment the final syllable left his mouth, the temperature in the well plummeted. The ground turned to ice, and a heavy, disembodied voice boomed upward from the dirt, asking exactly what he wanted. Mithun didn't hesitate. He demanded cash, influence, and a completely effortless existence. The voice fell silent. The moment those terms were spoken aloud in the dark, the agreement was locked. Whether the human party understood the fine print no longer mattered. The initial return on investment was absolutely staggering. A man who historically lost every single bet suddenly couldn't stop winning. Lotteries hit one after another. Highly disputed real estate deals, old mansions and frozen land plots, suddenly cleared out in Mithun's favor with a single conversation. Within months, his crumbling, leaky roof was a memory. He built a sprawling, marble-floored estate surrounded by high walls, employing a full staff of servants to wait on him hand and foot. When Rajan finally visited the new compound, Mithun was arrogant and celebratory, eager to show off his fleet of cars. But Rajan sat at the dinner table with a creeping, logical dread. This graph illustrates the core anomaly Rajan was sensing. Look at the return line rocketing upward, while the required effort metric stays perfectly flat at 0. Mithun's success was actively defying the laws of cause and effect. When the mouth of wealth breaks down this aggressively, there is almost always a terrifying hidden cost waiting to be invoiced. The market violently corrected itself. Land deals collapsed at the final signature. People who once flocked to Mithun began avoiding his calls, and the actual owners of his properties showed up to threaten him. His cash reserves evaporated as quickly as they had materialized. Then the psychological audits began. Every time Mithun closed his eyes, he was trapped in the same recurring nightmare. He was locked inside a damp, freezing cave, unable to find an exit, while the air slowly turned to heavy stone in his lungs. Soon, the nightmares bled into reality. He would snap awake, gagging and thrashing against the sheets, fighting invisible hands clamped firmly around his windpipe. Financially broken and physically exhausted, Mithun abandoned his pride. He sold off his last car just to eat, then dragged himself to Rajan's door in tears, begging for a way out. When an occult debt is past due, the creditor doesn't wait for a bank transfer. It bypasses your wallet and extracts payment directly from your nervous system. Rajan immediately brought in Baba Gorakhnath, a local specialist in occult bindings. The specialist took one lap around Mithun's house, felt the air, and demanded to be taken to the dry well. Standing over the crumbling stones, Gorakhnath identified the fatal error. Mithun's jailhouse newspaper clipping had been torn at the bottom. It gave him the exact activation sequence, but completely omitted the maintenance schedule. This calendar illustrates the missing terms. The torn section specified a mandatory blood sacrifice on every single Amavasya, the night of the new moon, to sustain the agreement. Mithun had been in severe default for months. He racked up immense wealth while entirely starving the exact entity providing it. In the strict architecture of a demonic pact, ignorance of the terms does not grant you immunity from the penalties. On the eve of the very next new moon, a trembling Mithun descended back into the rotting well. He brought a black rooster, desperately attempting to make a delayed payment. He severed the bird's neck over the dirt floor, but the offering was aggressively rejected. The liquid was violently sucked into the soil, leaving the surface bone dry in a fraction of a second. The ground began to vibrate, fracturing open and blasting the rejected offering directly back onto Mithin's chest. A heavy, grating voice echoed out of the fissures. It stated plainly that it had given him everything, and he had let it starve. Because the payment was late, it was bypassing the offering and taking its share directly. Black, decaying hands erupted from the soil, latching onto Mithin's legs. Before he could even formulate a scream, the earth violently pulled him under. The dirt settled. The well fell completely silent. Dark magic functions as a lethal ledger. By signing a contract without reading the terms, the debtor eventually becomes the primary asset to be collected.